Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KON Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. This show is made possible by the McPherson Tax Defense Group, 1-800-BEAT-IRS, beatirs.com, serving Alaskans, Americans since 1978 with all your tax defense needs. We have online with us Naghmeh Abedini. She is the wife of Saeed, who many of you listening to this program have heard me talk about, presently imprisoned in Iran, a convert to the Christian faith, under constant torture, under constant harassment, now facing new charges. Naghmeh will be joining me at the Freedom 2015 conference in Des Moines, upcoming next week. If you want to know more about it, freedom2015.org. Type in Miller, and you'll get a huge discount on your fee to get into the conference. Naghmeh, thank you so much for joining us, being on the air, being willing to talk to us about your situation and your husband's situation in prison in Iran today.
Of course, and thank you for having me on and raising more awareness on my husband's plight.
Naghmeh, if you could just give us a brief overview of how your husband, and I guess at the time you were also imprisoned in Iran, and then bring us kind of to today's date. We'll also talk a little bit about some recent developments as well.
Well, I've been threatened. Saeed and I were both born in Iran, but I was raised in Idaho. Interesting enough, for the last 30 years, I've been here. But I went to Iran about 2001, soon after September 11, and I felt that the Lord wanted me to go and share my faith with the Muslim world, and that would transform God's love and forgiveness would transform them. And I started with my cousins. I went and started sharing with my cousins and relatives. And about a year after I met Saeed, he was born and raised in Iran. He had been a radical Muslim, was being recruited by Hezbollah to attack Israel, and God has changed his life. He'd become a born-again Christian on fire for the Lord, and that's when I met him, and he was a pastor when I met him.
Could you tell us a little bit about his conversion?
Actually, right around the time he was converted, he was ready to take, he was being recruited by Hezbollah. He was about to kill or take the life of a pastor that he had heard say Jesus is Lord in his neighborhood. And around that time is when two Christian Assyrians, Iranians, approached him in a park he was at and asked to pray for him. And he just said, okay, and which he would have, he doesn't even know why he said that. But they prayed for him, and the change started there. But really what really transformed him was one night, and these Christian Assyrians had given him a Bible. One night he was not sure. He was very frustrated and not sure which way was the truth. And he had the Bible in his hand. And he had the Quran. And he said, God, what is the right way? Show me. And that night he heard a voice say, Saeed, I'm coming back soon. Go preach my gospel. He heard it 3 times. The third time it was very loud. And he woke up and he said, okay, I will do it. And he saw the back of Jesus walking away, and that really transformed his decision, made that final decision that this was, the way. So that's a long story short, but it's a longer process, but really that vision really is what changed him.
Just listening to that gives you goosebumps. I mean, my word. And, of course, then actively went out and was involved in spreading the word of Christ, as you were also in Iran. You guys met, married. Let's fast forward to the imprisonment.
Yes, we married, that we were serving in the house churches or home groups, came to the States in 2006, had our 2 kids, Rebecca in 2006, Jacob in 2008, and it went back to Iran in 2009, was interrogated and but never put in prison, and told that the Iranian government actually said, don't touch the house churches anymore, but if you help us with humanitarian efforts, then they encouraged us to start humanitarian efforts such as the orphanage, which is what we were working on since 2009. And in June of 2012, Saeed would travel from 2009 to 2012 2-3 times a year to Iran. And in 2012, June of 2012, he left. It was supposed to be a very short trip, and he never came back. And that's when the Iranian government arrested him and imprisoned him. They tortured him. They said if he denied his faith, that he would be freed.
Now, you also were threatened with imprisonment, right?
Yes, when I was in Iran with Saeed from 2001 until 2005, there was an incident in 2004 where I had a gun pointed to my head and told by radicals and told that I would be put in prison. I've been detained a few times. Just being a Christian in Iran and being a convert, you're always harassed by hardliners, and but I was never put in prison. I had detained a few times, and one of the times was, I guess the scariest was when I had guns pointed to my head and told that I would be tortured, I'd be raped, and then I would be killed if I didn't deny Christ. And just by God's grace, I was able to say I'm a Christian, and just saw God's hand move. And this interrogator who was so hateful ended up asking for a Bible and just almost crying like a baby in front of other guards. But just seeing God touch his life as he saw us stand up for our faith.
Boy, that really is when the rubber hits the road, if you will. I mean, you have to make a decision at that point. What is more real, Christ or this physical threat against me, right?
Exactly. You know, it's just the moment where it hit me. I'm not in Boise. This is real. I have a gun pointed to my head. I'm in the hands of hardliners. They will do what they're saying they will do, but is Christ that real to me? Or is it just a religion, just going through the motion, going to church, reading my Bible? Or is it something I'm willing to give my life for? And at that moment, I just knew. And I mean, nothing within me wanted to say I was a Christian. Everything wanted to fight that. But just I could feel God's presence. And it just, I knew it. I knew that Jesus was worth the price. He'd given his life for me on the cross. And no matter the cost, I didn't know we would be saved. But I knew no matter the cost, I could not deny him. He was every fiber of my being.
Now, Saeed has become a flashpoint. I mean, obviously a rallying cry for those that are trying to spread religious freedom to these dark areas of the world. Of course, also with the nuclear deal with Iran. His freedom has been in question. A lot of people wondering why the Obama administration has not made his release a precondition of the deal with Iran. You actually had opportunity to meet with Obama regarding your husband, right?
I did. I met him January of this year, and he said my son asked him if he could help bring his daddy home for his birthday, which was in March, and he said, I will try, Jacob. I will try very hard. And it didn't happen, and Jacob woke up very disappointed, thinking he thought, if President Obama said he would be home. But you know what happened was the nuclear deal was a very, very, very high priority, and unfortunately the Americans were put on the back burner until the deal was made. They didn't want to mention something that might upset the Iranians, might make them walk away from the nuclear deal. So the American hostages were put on the back burner. There were talks on the sidelines, but not really too much pressure was put on their release until the deal was made. And our administration, as I've been told by State Department and many officials in our administration, that they really believed that Iran would do the right thing and release the Americans. And actually it got worse after the deal.
And let's talk about that. I mean, recently, new charges announced against her husband. You told me during the break that he was tasered. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on with Saeed and also how we can help him at this point.
Exactly. After the deal, it got worse. The Iranian government is just, last month, they tasered him. They took him into an interrogation room. And, I get all the updates through his relatives to visit him in prison, his parents. The kids and I have not seen him since June of 2012, but he was told he's getting additional charges and more years in prison, which is something they actually told him from day one when they were torturing him. Since 2012, they said, if you don't deny Christ and return to Islam, then you will never get out. The 8-year sentence, they said, is really, it's really not a solid number. We will keep on adding more years, and we will keep you here for a long time.
The prison that he's in, my understanding is it's one of the worst ones in Iran. Is that right?
It is. It's one of the worst prisons, not just in Iran, but in the world. He was initially put in Evin prison, but people were accepting the Lord in that prison, so he was beaten and exiled to another prison called Rajai Shah prison, and where he's at right now. His cell is supposed to hold 20 people. It holds about 80. It's infested with rats and cockroaches. He doesn't get clean water. The food is horrible. His medical condition is not very good. Doctors have said he needs medical attention and surgeries, which the Iranian government has refused.
And, of course, he's continuing to spread the light of Christ even in those dark circumstances.
Yes, he's Saeed. That was what drew me to him, is very passionate about his faith. Nothing will, he will not back down. And I knew that from day one when I was told that by his family that he was being interrogated and told to deny his faith, and he would be getting more charges if he didn't. I just knew that the Iranian government had not, something that they didn't know yet, that's something Saeed would never do.
Societal changes in Iran. Do you think things are changing in a way in Iran that will make the Iranian people more open to Christianity, the ways of Christ, away from radical Islam? Or do you think that it's actually going the opposite direction? What's your take on the nation?
Well, the pressure and the sanctions, I know they've been horrible for the people, but they've actually had opened up the people of Iran to the gospel. Up until the 70s, until the Islamic Revolution in the 70s, maybe there was 500 Christians in all of Iran. And now there's somewhere between 500,000 to a few million. The lowest estimate is around 500,000. And it's growing. I hope that, that they discover, the Iranians have a lot of hope in this new president and in the nuclear deal, that it will make their life better. But actually his records, the Iranian president's records, have shown that the human rights records are getting worse, and that he was really a puppet to make the nuclear deal. So my hope is that the Iranian people will continue to seek God and not look to the president and things for hope, that they would continue to discover their hope in Christ.
Naghmeh, tell us how we can help your husband.
Prayer. I always pray with my hands open. I can see God using this to shape me and shape Saeed and share it for the gospel. And so I never demand God to release Saeed. I say, I'm hurting, my kids are hurting, but you have your way. And that's what I ask for people to pray, that they would just pray for our family, that we would get, God would give us the strength to continue in this journey we are on, no matter how long it takes, and that God will use it for the gospel message.
Thank you so much, Naghmeh, for sharing what's going on with you and your family, your children. My understanding is you have a Facebook page where people can follow up. And, of course, you'll also be at the conference in Des Moines coming up next weekend, freedom2015.org. If you want to go, type in Miller. You'll get a discount code. If you're in Alaska, fly down to Kansas City. It's a quick hop, jump up to Des Moines. And I look forward to seeing you there. I'll be broadcasting on Friday, Naghmeh.
Thank you. Me too. God bless.
God bless you, too. Stay with us, The Joe Miller Show. We'll be right back.